My son handed me a folder, no hug, no smile. Inside was a list titled Future Expenses, and my name wasn't on it. Name's Brantley 62 used to be an accountant. The AC buzzed overhead cold as his eyes, and I gripped the old Zippo my father left me still unlit. Ever been written off like a used receipt? By your own blood, there wasn't a chair with my name on it. Not literally, of course, but it was there in the way no one offered me a seat. The room had the smell of new paint and vanilla candles, the kind Marlise liked too sweet synthetic. The kind that tried to mask something else underneath. It was Calder's 35th birthday. A coastal breeze slipped through the half-open windows of their clapboard house in Beaufort, South Carolina. The place looked like it had stepped straight out of a catalog, polished floors, quartz countertops, and not a single scuff mark on the white walls. The only thing that didn't belong was me. I held a bottle of bourbon, Calder's old favorite from his college days, and a small paper-wrapped box. Nobody took them from me. I stood by the archway watching people drift past. Voices rose and fell like the tide-warm, practiced forgettable. Marshall, someone finally called. A colleague of Calder's, I think. I gave a polite smile, unsure if he remembered my name or was just filling in a blank. The buffet table was full tiny shrimp on skewers, sliced cheeses, folded like napkins, pastel cupcakes. There was a long dining table and then another folding table off to the side, near the hallway bathroom. That's where I found my spot, a corner chair half tucked beside a dusty plant. No one noticed when I sat. Or stood again. Marlise took center stage around noon, one hand resting on her round belly, the other holding a plastic flute of sparkling water. Her voice rang out over the room with practiced ease. She thanked everyone. She didn't mention me, not even once. I had helped with their down payment years ago. Helped repaint this very house after the hurricane in 2018. I'd fixed their sink last Thanksgiving, but none of that came up. I moved through the room like furniture being shuffled, necessary, but unnoticed. I passed Calder near the kitchen. He was refilling ice. I tapped his shoulder lightly. "Hey, need help with anything?" I asked. He turned. His face twitched recognition and embarrassment, something in between. "No, it's all set. Just, can you maybe hang back? Let everyone mingle freely. We don't want it to get weird." Weird. I nodded, swallowing something bitter. My hand brushed against the lighter in my jacket pocket, the silver one my father gave me when I turned 18. It used to feel weighty. Now it just felt old. Later, as I hovered by the window, Calder leaned in again. His voice was low, tight. "No one wants you here, Dad. Just smile for the photos." He didn't say it to hurt. At least I don't think he did. He said it like he was managing a situation, like I was an inconvenience that had to be handled with minimal noise. I smiled as instructed. I stayed for another hour, maybe 2. I can't recall. Everything after that sentence went foggy like a photo overexposed to the sun. Faces blurred, conversations became static. The birthday cake arrived and Marlise beamed while Calder blew out candles. A guest clapped me on the back and asked if I was one of the neighbors. I didn't correct him. By late afternoon, I stepped outside. The oak tree I planted the week Calder was born still stood in the front yard. Its roots had cracked the walkway slightly. Marlise once said they needed to get someone to fix that. The branches hung wide and generous over the sidewalk, casting long shadows on the grass. I stood under it and looked up. Light filtered through, patchy and warm. I thought about the years, how many hours I had spent sanding, painting, hauling furniture, mowing this yard, when Calder was away at college. Thought about the calloused hands, the gas station sandwiches on moving days, the nights I slept in this house alone, when they were off visiting Marlise's parents. I hadn't realized how invisible I'd become. Inside I heard laughter, music, the clinking of forks against porcelain. Calder was probably unwrapping gifts. There had been a table full of them. Glossy bags with fancy ribbon. Mine sat to the side. I doubted they'd remember it. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't announce anything. I walked to my truck, parked a block down, and sat for a long moment before starting the engine. The bourbon bottle was still in my hands. I placed it gently on the passenger seat. In the rearview mirror, the house looked perfect, like nothing had ever gone wrong there. as if it had always belonged to someone else. Driving home, the sky turned soft with dusk. The marshland on either side of the road gleamed with dying sunlight. A heron stood knee-deep in still water, unmoving, patient. I didn't cry, I wasn't angry, but I felt separate, like I had finally been moved out of the frame entirely. Some endings don't come with slamming doors or screaming matches. Some come with a whisper just loud enough to kill something quiet inside. No one wants you here, Dad. I didn't sleep that night. My bed was too quiet, too neat. The house made all the old noises, pipes groaning under the floor rain, needling the window panes. Distant creaks from the attic where wind curled through forgotten insulation. But it was the silence inside me that kept me up. That sentence Calder said, "No one wants you here," echoed like a stone skipping across a still pond. Each bounce weaker, but still rippling. Around 3 a.m., I gave up pretending to rest. I shuffled into my study wearing the old flannel robe Celia gave me our last Christmas together, the hem frayed just above the ankles. My study was small, lined with dusty bookshelves and memories in faded frames. The desk lamp buzzed with a dying filament casting light in stutters. I booted up the computer and took a long sip of cold tea. A film had formed on the surface. I didn't wince. The Fidelity homepage loaded slowly. I hadn't checked it in months, maybe a year. I'd never needed to. Everything was automatic pensions rolled in utilities, paid themselves, and the rest quietly accumulated for a life I had once planned to share with family. Not anymore. I keyed in my login with deliberate slowness. The keyboard felt stickier than I remembered. Then I saw it. One of the sub-accounts was labeled Calder Investment Side Fund. I stared. That label hadn't been there before. My accounts had always been simple, no fancy buckets or aggressive risk, just safe, stable, boring. What I saw was neither. I clicked into it. My pulse picked up. Transactions scrolled into view. Large withdrawal, March 18th. $37,250 marked asset repositioning. I hadn't authorized any such thing. I leaned back, heart thudding with something that wasn't quite fear, wasn't quite rage. It was like discovering your kitchen window was open all night, not knowing what might have entered or left. I remembered Calder years ago at Sunday lunch casually offering to optimize my portfolio. "Just shelter some assets, make things tax happier for you," he said with a smile. I remember nodding non-committal. I never signed anything. Or had I? I opened my email and started composing. "Did you move funds from my retirement last month?" I wasn't informed. I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 minutes later, a reply chimed. "Just sheltering it. Relax, it's still yours, just protected differently. Still yours." The phrase tasted like cold metal. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked patient and stupid, like it knew I wouldn't sleep tonight either. A chill ran up my spine. I stood across the room and knelt in front of the safe behind the bookshelf. I hadn't opened it in nearly a year. A puff of dry air escaped when I cracked it. Inside, among birth certificates, the title to the truck, and the small velvet box with Celia's ring, lay the old Zippo lighter. I picked it up. The metal was colder than I remembered. Heavier, too, it bore the initials ML, still visible, though the engraving had worn down from years of pocket carry. My father's hands had held this lighter. Mine had taken it on road trips, fishing weekends. And that night Calder was born during a thunderstorm. I used it to light a candle in the hospital room when the power flickered. Tonight my hand trembled as I held it. First time in years. I placed it carefully on the desk beside the keyboard. Then I pulled out a yellow legal pad and wrote in ink that looked more severe under the flickering lamp. "Verify power of attorney. Call Clayton Morse first thing." I didn't know if Calder had somehow maneuvered something official, some buried form. I'd initialed blindly, some signature he'd nudged into a pile when I wasn't paying attention. But I intended to find out. I picked up the phone, dialed the 24-hour helpline on the back of my account statement. A chirpy voice answered. I confirmed my identity, requested a record of changes, and asked calmly, I think, if anyone had been granted trading permissions. The line went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sir, there's a limited power of attorney filed under your son's name, dated June 2020. My heart thudded once hard. June 2020. That was during the pandemic, the height of chaos, the month I was hospitalized briefly with pneumonia. I barely remembered signing any forms then. I think the operator hung up and sat there, eyes fixed on the lighter. My hand rested next to it, not moving. The lamp hummed and blinked again. Through the window, dawn was beginning to sketch itself across the sea, pale and reluctant. I drew a line under the note on the pad. Tomorrow would be a busy day. I was staring at the ledger again when I heard the porch screen creak. Then a knock, sharp, purposeful, and annoyingly familiar. Hetty Drumlin never knocked twice. She pushed open the screen door with her elbow, carrying a brown cake tin in one hand and a folder of old newspaper clippings in the other. "Brought lemon cake," she said. "And a reckoning." I blinked. "Morning, Hetty. Don't morning me. I heard you weren't invited to the Spring Festival committee this year." She placed the tin on the kitchen table with a louder than necessary thud. "First time in 15 years, and nobody tells you that's disgraceful." I shrugged. "Maybe they thought I was busy," she sniffed. "Busy being trampled, maybe." The kettle hadn't been turned on yet, so she did it herself. Still moved like a woman, half her 76 years, despite the hip replacement she never shut up about in winter. Her cardigan smelled like lavender sachets and lemon soap. She glanced around, took stock of the scene, 2 empty tea mugs, a half-crumpled fidelity statement on the counter, and my father's old lighter lying open beside the salt jar. Her eyes narrowed. "That your daddy's?" I nodded. She walked over and picked it up delicately. "He'd be rollin' over if he saw this mess. You lettin' Calder walk around like he owns the coast." I didn't answer. Rain clouded the morning light outside. The screen door shivered gently with the Beaufort breeze. From somewhere up the road, a dog barked twice, then gave up. We sat across from each other at the table. She poured tea, added 2 spoons of sugar to mine. Without asking, like always, the spoon clinked against the ceramic with a kind of finality. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" she asked. "It's complicated." Hetty chuckled without humor. "Isn't it always? But that don't mean you stay quiet while your son rewrites your story." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again. "I found a withdrawal," I said finally, "from my retirement account. Big one, in his name." Her face didn't change. Just one slow blink, then a tilt of her head that said, "Keep going," and I might have signed something. During the pandemic. I was sick. Her voice softened, but not much. "You think he tricked you? I don't know." She leaned back and reached into the folder she brought. "You remember this?" She slid across an old black and white photo of us. On the 2008 festival float, me in suspenders. Her with a fake chicken on her head. We laughed briefly. "Back then," she said, "you stood up for yourself. You told that mayor she couldn't cut funding for the arts program. You got in his face in front of a camera. That was different." "No, it wasn't." She leaned forward. "The only difference is now you think being quiet equals being kind. But it ain't, not when it costs you." I looked down at the lighter. My thumb rolled over the ridges of the lid. Then without thinking, I flicked it. Nothing. I tried again. A spark, then silence. I tried once more with more force. The lid snapped sideways, bent. It wouldn't close properly now. "I think I broke it," I muttered. Hetty didn't blink. "You didn't break it. You revealed what it already was. Tired, ignored, stretched too far." I placed the lighter gently on the tile, not caring any more about the scrape it made. "I don't want a war," I said. "This ain't war, it's dignity. You still got a pen-paper pride." My mouth was dry. I nodded slowly. Then I looked up, and for the first time in months, the fog in my mind began to clear. "You know any lawyers who work quiet and fast?" She smiled, not kindly satisfied. "I know just the one," she said, "and he owes me 3 favors and a pie." Outside, the porch swing knocked softly against the wall. The breeze shifted. Somewhere in town, church bells began to toll the half-hour. It felt like a signal. The herringbone jacket still fit him somehow. Same gray-brown weave, same leather patches at the elbows, though the left one was more scuffed than I remembered. Clayton Morse had worn that jacket to my wedding, and now 3 decades later, he wore it to rewrite my legacy. His office hadn't changed much either. The scent of paper and pipe tobacco lingered, even though I knew he hadn't smoked in years. Books leaned against each other like old friends on sagging shelves. The sea air had etched faint white trails across the window panes. "Let me guess," Clayton said, settling behind his desk. "You're not mad, just done." I offered a weak smile. "How long have you been holding that one in?" He shrugged, pulling open a drawer. "Since Hetty called me, said you finally woke up." I placed a small folder on his desk. Nothing dramatic. Just a few neatly stacked documents, the deed to the house, some pension paperwork, and 2 faded envelopes from the safe. The lighter broken and tarnished I'd left at home. I didn't need it anymore. Clayton adjusted his reading glasses and began thumbing through the stack. His notary assistant, a quiet woman named Rena, came in with tea and sat near the file cabinet, her laptop already open. The air smelled of ink-aging varnish and something that reminded me of dried magnolia leaves. So Clayton said, flipping a page, "This is the full set." I nodded. "Everything that matters." He took a slow breath and said nothing for a while. Just scanned, marked, and turned pages with the precision of a man who knew that once ink hit paper, it couldn't be unsaid. "You sure about the exclusion?" "I'm sure." He looked up. "Even the granddaughter," I hesitated. "Especially them. She'll be fine. She has their voice." Clayton raised an eyebrow but didn't push. We moved on. With care, he crafted the language clear, unmistakable, unchallengeable. The house upon my passing would transfer to the Beaufort Seniors Garden Trust, a non-profit I'd helped fund years ago. A place where people could grow tomatoes, argue about jazz, and remember the names of the butterflies on the fence. I had once promised Calder he'd inherit the house. Back then, I thought promises were sacred. Now I saw them for what they were, options. And he had chosen his. Clause by clause, Clayton read it all out loud. Each sentence settled in the room like bricks in wet mortar. Finally, he reached the last page. "The signatures go here," he said, pushing the folder toward me. I picked up the pen, pressed it slowly to the page. I didn't tremble. I didn't pause. The pen glided smoothly, my name blooming across the paper like a tide reclaiming old ground. No flourish, no hesitation. Rina added her signature as notary. Clayton reached into his drawer for the wax seal. The red circle hissed as it hit the paper, followed by a soft puff of cooling wax. He blew gently, then folded the will and slipped it into an envelope lined with gold filigree. "No copies," he said. I looked up. Not even one. "They'll see it when they need to, not before." A draft from the window lifted a page from his desk, the one titled Power of Attorney Revoked. It flapped once, then settled face down. The sound reminded me of a flag dropping. Clayton sealed the envelope and handed it back to me. "You don't need to explain yourself," he said. "But if you ever want to, don't write a letter. They never hear tone in ink." I tucked the envelope into my coat pocket and stood. The world didn't shift. There was no thunderclap, no light from the heavens. But as I stepped outside into the early May air, still thick with salt and pollen, I felt something dislodge in my chest. Not pain, not pride, just quiet. A breeze nudged my collar. Somewhere behind me, Clayton's door clicked shut. I walked down the steps slowly. The street was calm. Shop awnings fluttering in the wind, a child's bicycle leaned against a fire hydrant, its front tires spinning gently. No one knew what had just happened, but I did. And it was enough. Marley's called 3 times before noon. I didn't pick up. The 4th time, her voice dropped into my voicemail like a weight. "What is this? Are you trying to ruin us?" I didn't respond. Instead, I sat by the screen door with the envelope unopened beside me. The sun angled in through the porch slats, striping my legs like prison bars. The iced tea I poured hours ago had grown warm. The condensation left a perfect ring on the wood rail. Clayton had told me, "Let them read it." In silence. That's where the weight is, so I let silence speak. The courier had delivered the envelope around 9 a.m., a young man with a polite nod and no questions. I'd given him the address. He handled it like a routine task. But for me, it felt like sending a tremor through a fault line. By 11:45, I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel. A door slammed. Then footsteps. Fast, angry. Calder didn't knock. He stormed in like he still had keys to everything. The envelope, now creased and clenched in his fist, looked too small for the fury it carried. "You care to explain this?" he barked, shaking it. "What the hell?" "Dad?" I didn't answer. I walked to the porch and leaned on the rail. The breeze was warm, thick with salt and cut grass. It felt like spring was trying to wash something clean. Calder followed, stomping, expecting a fight. His face was red, not from the sun, but from something deeper. He held the envelope like a weapon, but it had already cut. "You rewrote the will. You think this is fair?" After everything still. I didn't say much. Just watched the yard, the old oak tree swaying slightly. I thought of its roots, deep, quiet, holding more than they ever showed. Marlise appeared next. She didn't stomp, she glided in with that brittle composure of someone used to being heard. Her eyes were glossed over, her voice practiced. "We included you in everything. Birthdays, holidays. You're cutting off your own legacy." I looked at her, then at Calder. My voice was steady when it came. "Legacy is what you carry forward, not what you take." That stopped them. Calder stepped back like the words slapped him. Marlise's mouth opened slightly, then closed. She blinked, unsure of the script now. The envelope dropped, landed on the floorboards near my feet. Calder didn't bend to pick it up. He turned, walked down the steps, and didn't look back. Marlise lingered for a moment longer, searching my face for something that wasn't there. Then she left too. Inside, the phone rang again. I ignored it. Instead, I called Hetty. "They read it?" she asked. "Yes." And they left. She chuckled softly. Sometimes silence is louder than a shout. The porch swing creaked beside me as I sat down. I picked up the envelope, smoothed its edges, and set it on the small table beside the tea. The paper still trembled. I didn't. Outside, a lawnmower hummed from a few yards over. A bird landed on the rail, looked at me, then flew off. I let the quiet settle back in. Whatever storm they brought, it had passed. I didn't win, I just didn't lose myself. And that, I figured, was a start. Later that evening, I found myself walking the perimeter of the backyard. The hydrangeas were blooming early, blue and wild. I hadn't trimmed them in weeks, but they grew anyway, untamed and unapologetic. I sat on the edge of the old garden bench. My father built it with his own hands. The wood had split in places, but it still held, like so many things that outlast their purpose. From this angle, I could see the whole house. Not grand, not modern, but real, lived in. Full of echoes and baked in laughter, and even the kind of silence that stretches between two people who know each other too well. I thought of Calder, of Marlise, of how we'd all once fit in this space. How love had slowly warped into obligation, and how obligation had calcified into assumption. I pulled my phone from my pocket, not to check for missed calls, but to open a blank note. I typed June 14, clean gutters, replace porch bulb. Call Grace about her grandson's baseball game. It wasn't a grand to-do list, but it was mine, own, chosen, and quiet. As the light faded, a breeze moved through the trees. The swing on the porch creaked faintly in rhythm with it. I stayed there until the stars came out, thinking not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd just made room for. I saw the U-Haul before I saw them. Parked at an angle like they had no intention of staying long. No knock, no doorbell, just presence. And absence all at once. The porch was damp with dew, and the boards creaked beneath my slippers as I stepped out with a mug of black coffee. Steam rose and faded. The birds hadn't even finished their first song. Calder moved around the truck like a man checking for damage he already knew was there. He didn't look at me, not directly. Marlise emerged from the house wearing sunglasses, though the sun was barely up. She cradled her stomach, almost like protecting something or hiding it. I didn't speak. I just watched. Earlier, Hetty had called. Her voice scratchy over the line. Sometimes they don't apologize. They just leave. I'd written her words down on a post-it and stuck it beside the phone. They made sense now. Too much sense. Calder walked past me once with a cardboard box marked photo books. His shoes were untied. The heel of one sock drooped. Details like that cling to your memory whether you want them to or not. There were no raised voices, no accusations. Just motion boxes shifting, a thump against the doorframe, tape being yanked and slapped. The rituals of leaving. He paused at the doorway once. His hand brushed the frame, eyes puffy, red-rimmed. We looked at each other but said nothing. I remembered when I helped him move into his first college dorm. Same brand of U-Haul, same nervous pacing. But back then he hugged me. Today he didn't. Marlis brushed past me with a tote bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't say goodbye. Just a faint perfume in the air, one I couldn't place. I sipped the coffee, bitter now. The wind knocked the screen door open, then back and forth like a metronome, marking the time that was being taken from me. Across the street, Hetty stood on her porch, arms crossed. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She just stood there, steady as judgment. The final box landed in the truck. Calder closed the hatch slowly with a kind of reverence that felt almost cruel. He walked to the driver's side, hand gripping the handle. For a second, he didn't move, just breathed. Then he turned to me. Our eyes met. I nodded. He nodded back. One of those quiet agreements life forces on you. One of those farewells that carries no ceremony but every consequence. He got in. Marlis was already in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. The engine turned. A cough, then a growl, then a steady hum. As the truck rolled down the street, the window on Calder's side was open, but he didn't look back. I sat down on the porch steps. The coffee left a damp ring on the railing. I watched the steam fade until nothing remained. Behind me, the door swung open again and stayed there, wide and hollow. Across the street, Hetty was still standing, still watching. I didn't need her to come over. Not yet. Maybe not at all. The breeze picked up. It carried the scent of salt and cut grass, mixed with the faintest memory of lemon cake from 3 days ago. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler kicked on. The rhythmic ticking broke the silence, then became part of it. I glanced down at my mug. A small chip on the rim caught the light. Had it always been there? I couldn't remember. An old squirrel, the one missing a chunk of its left ear, darted across the fence post, like it did every morning. The world moved on. The silence wasn't heavy. It was clean, like freshly washed sheets hung out to dry. Even the birds seemed to pause their chatter, giving space to the exit that had just unfolded. I thought about calling someone, Clayton maybe, just to let the sound of another voice fill the void. I didn't. Instead, I breathed, counted to 4 on the inhale, held, counted to 4 on the exhale. The kind of breath you take after a storm passes but before the rainbow dares to show. A dragonfly hovered near the porch rail, then zipped away. No message, no metaphor, just flight. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for the lighter. I cleaned the lighter, took hours. Not because it needed it, but because I did. I polished every scratch, every dent, like I was sanding down time itself. When the flame flickered on the 3rd try, it was the first honest warmth I'd felt in weeks. The afternoon sun filtered through the half-broken fence slats. Dry soil crunched under my boots as I stepped into the backyard. It hadn't seen real care in years. Patches of brown grass, brush waist-high in corners, but in the silence it felt like possibility. Hetty arrived with a folder tucked under her arm and a plastic tub balanced on her hip. "Town beautification grant," she said. "You gonna wine or plant something?" I smiled. "Both, probably." We cleared brush together. I hammered in a wooden sign she'd painted, "Brantley Garden, all welcome." It tilted slightly in the earth, and I let it be. A boy from next door wandered over, watering can in hand, barefoot, curious. He didn't speak, just poured carefully onto a patch of daisies we'd transplanted from the front yard. His mother followed minutes later, holding a tray of peach cobbler. "Saw you out here," she said. "Thought you might like a break." "Looks like I needed one," I said. We sat on upturned buckets, sharing warm cobbler and lemonade. Hetty jotted down bullet points for the grant proposal in her neat looping cursive. "This ain't a legacy," she said. "It's a future. Yours or theirs, it doesn't matter." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the lighter. Under the oak tree, I lit a stick of incense. The flame danced steady, catching the air just right. Smoke curled upward through the heat shimmer. Wind tugged at the edges of an old prayer flag that had somehow survived years of neglect. It fluttered against the rusted fence like it was trying to remember a song. The boy knelt beside the oak, digging small holes with a plastic spoon. "Is it okay if I plant these?" he asked. Tiny wildflower seeds rattled in his fist. "More than okay," I told him. The light shifted afternoon, turning to that particular gold hour where everything feels both old and new. Hetty collected her papers, gave the peach cobbler pan back to the boy's mother, and winked at me. "Tomorrow," she said, "we'll tackle compost." They left just as quietly as they came. I stood alone again, but the yard didn't feel empty. It felt expectant. Back inside, I laid the grant packet on my desk. The lighter rested beside it. Flame gone, but scent of incense still lingered. I picked up the pen, paused. A bee floated lazily near the rosemary bush, then vanished into the afternoon light. Somewhere on the block, a lawnmower buzzed faintly like a memory too soft to hold on to. My knees cracked when I stood, but the ache felt earned, not like punishment, but proof. I traced the shape of the oak tree's bark with my fingers. Remembering the year we planted it, Calder was 7, and he insisted on naming it Captain Green. Funny how the names of trees outlast the reasons behind them. The wind picked up, carrying a smell of grass clippings and salt from the nearby inlet. It wasn't a dramatic breeze, just a passing whisper, but it rustled the prayer flag again, and this time it really did sound like a song being remembered. Back in the kitchen, I rinsed the cobbler dish and dried it slowly. No hurry. The faucet dripped twice after I turned it off. Little details, the kind you miss when the house is full of voices. On the desk, the pen still waited beside the grant application. I held it between thumb and finger, tested its weight. Wrote my name once on a blank sheet just to feel the ink move. The lighter lay beside the incense burner. I clicked it once more just to see the flame. Still there, still warm, and finally I signed the first line of the application. My name was printed in cursive at the end of the Spring Festival program. Garden Benefactor. It wasn't bold or front page, just a quiet little line at the bottom, like a wink between old friends. Hetty had slipped it in. I didn't ask for it, but I didn't mind either. The town square bloomed with color. Bunting stretched from lamppost to lamppost, fluttering in the warm June breeze. The smell of barbecue mingled with honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. I arrived early, more out of habit than necessity. The boy from next door waved as I passed. His hand was stained green, fingertips ringed in dirt. "We watered early, Mr. B," he shouted. I gave him a thumbs up. That kid had better timing than most clocks. The mayor gave a short speech, something about community spirit and the value of roots. I barely listened. My eyes wandered to the long tables under the sycamores, to the kids chasing bubbles, to Hetty, trying to swat a fly with her program. Then they called my name. Just my first. Brantley. People clapped. Not a thunderous ovation, just warm, steady, like a hand on your back when you didn't know you needed it. I walked up, adjusted the microphone, and said, "I don't know much about speeches, but I do know that dirt under your nails means you tried. That's good enough for me." Then I stepped back down. Children moved through the crowd, handing out seed packets. The banner above the garden stall read, "Planting Forward." Near the back of the crowd, I saw a couple that looked familiar. The way the man stood, jaw tight, like he wanted to be anywhere else. The woman beside him held her elbows like she was afraid of bumping anyone. It could have been Calder and Marlis. Or not. I didn't chase them. Didn't wave. Some ghosts visit quiet just to remind you they were real. Later, I found my seat at the end of the community table. Plates clinked, stories shared. Music from a student quartet bounced between brick walls. A little girl climbed onto my lap without asking. I looked at her, surprised. She offered me half a cookie. I took it. Evening settled soft and pink over Beaufort. Fireflies stirred as the sun slipped behind the rooftops. Hetty leaned over and whispered, "That banner looks good from here." I nodded. Back home, the porch light buzzed quietly. I set a ceramic teacup on the rail, steam curling upward. The breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden. On the small table beside me, the corner of the grant approval letter lifted in the wind, flapped once, then settled again. I didn't chase it, just sat there and breathed. The garden still smells of jasmine at dusk, and the lighter, once broken, now flickering true, sits quietly by the window. I didn't plan for this version of life, but sometimes the best chapters begin after the table has been cleared. I learned that legacy isn't about names on a deed. It's about what you plant and who you invite to grow beside you. You can lose blood and still find kin in kindness. Sometimes bridges collapse, so we can learn which ones are worth rebuilding. Have you ever found peace in an unexpected place? I'd love to hear your story. Feel free to share it below or join us for more moments like this.